Hope everybody's doing good today. It's October the 18th, and I think we're supposed to get up into the 60s here. But last weekend we actually saw some snowfall, so winter is upon us, or around the corner, however you want to look at it. And I know a lot of you are wanting updates on the game foul and that kind of thing, and I'll get around to that, but I wanted to take care of some requests on these next couple of videos. Again, I don't want to make this channel just about game foul. I want to make about poultry in general. So I got a request 2 weeks ago from Julie Williams. She had a couple of questions, which were how to remove recessive genes, how to bring out recessive genes, how to breed certain colors, how to remove other traits. So let's just start by talking about breeding the traits in and out. So the best way to do this is through what is called test mating. Now, I'll make sure I've got my paper here where it needs to be. Let's say you've got your pair birds, your male and your female, and you suspect that this female might have a recessive trait. Let's use recessive black, which makes your brassy backs and your furnaces and those colors. Let's use that as an example. Now, how can you test mate to find out if this bird indeed has that trait? Well, first option is if you have a pair that is related from the same flock and the breeder tells you once in a while, I get this color, I get this brassy back color. You buy 2 red birds from him because he didn't have any brassy backed available. You breed them together and see what you get. Now you might get all red offspring because either neither one of them have that trait or only one of them has that trait. And in order to produce that recessive trait visibly, both parents have to have that recessive trait. So you can take a gamble on 2 red birds. You might or might not get anything. Then you can take and breed back to the parent on this side, back to the parent on that side, see what you get, that generation. The thing about it is, every time you do this, it's going to be a major gamble. You're just hoping that the birds that you're pairing up have the traits you want, because you can't see them. The better way to do it is to take and either get a pair that already both have that color present and visible, or at least one of the 2 birds in that pair has the trait present and visible. Now let's say this male is red, but your female is brassy back. Okay, everything out of that's going to come red, but it'll carry brassy. So at this point, you know for a fact all the offspring have the potential to produce this color because their mother showed it. So everybody got 1 copy of the gene. In order to increase the number of brassy colored birds, or furnace in the case of your birds, Julie, what you're going to want to do, you're going to want to take some of these here and breed back to the mother. Or if it's the father that's the brassy, you'd breed back to him. Whichever one shows the trait, that's the one you're going to want to breed back to. So you take these reds that carry brassy, you breed them back to the brassy parent, and you're going to get reds that carry, and you're going to get brassies out of that. And then you just take these brassies, breed them back, and then once you've got two that are both brassy, or furnace, or lavender, or any other recessive trait, as long as both birds visibly show that trait, and you breed them together, they should produce birds of the same color. In other words, like produces like. This is the same for the modeling gene, which produces spangle, as it's known in some color patterns. It's modeled on black birds, blue modeled on blues. I think they call it pearl when it's a lavender modeled. It's also the same trait you see in millefleurs, porcelains, goldnecks, Tolbunt Polish, and numerous others. Basically, what that trait is it produces a white tip on your feather, and if it's a colored feather, there should be black separating it from the colored portion of the feather, like that. If it's an all black feather, obviously, then you're just going to get the white tip. Now, here's where it gets kind of interesting. Some of these traits interact with other genes. I mentioned goldneck. Goldneck is millefleur with dominant white added to it. So then it takes this feather and it just eliminates that black bar and it lightens the ground color so that you just get this. Okay? But it's with a light ground color. Your Tolbunt Polish, Tolbunt can be made on any laced pattern, actually. I mean, if a guy really, really wanted to, they could make Tolbunt Seabrights, but it would take a long while. But what you're dealing with there is you've got your white tip, but then you've also got black lacing. And a colored ground. That's Tolbunt. But that's how you test mate to find and establish a recessive trait. Basically, you need to have a bird that is a known, in scientific terms, you'd call it a known variable. So, in this case, it would be a brassy bird because you absolutely know that that bird has that trait. There's no denying that bird has that trait because it shows it. And then you're going to test mate that to your red to find out if the red carries it. Because if the red carries it, you're going to get some brassies right off the bat. If the red does not, then everything should come out red. Same with spangling. Now, as far as red and bronzing and spangled and feather stubs, more or less that's going to come down to selection. You're going to have to select the birds that show that trait the least every generation. Keep an eye out for birds from unrelated stock that do not have the faults that you are trying to eliminate in your own. And you're going to have to do some matings with those birds to decrease the frequency in which those undesired traits happen. Now, it's interesting you brought up feather stubs. My camera ran out of memory there for a minute, but that's alright, because now I can zoom in a little better here so you can see what I was talking about. Okay, so you mentioned feather stubs. I'm assuming between the toes or down the shanks of the leg. Now, most people don't know this, but this is something that we run into with Polish also, and I've always kind of wondered what the inheritance of that trait was. I'd had a hen in my line of buff lace that had really bad shank feather stubs, but that was the only one I had ever had that was that bad that I'd noticed. So between that and her shortness of her legs, I attribute it to being probably pretty inbred. At the time, my records keeping skills weren't that great. I was a lot younger, but my flock was fairly closed, so everything was more or less related. Now this year, I actually took a hen that she was a bearded buff lace of an unrelated line who showed feather stubs going down her shanks. Bred her to a non-bearded buff male of my line. We produced 4 chicks. We still have 3. One of those 3 chicks is already showing feather stubs. So I would say that once it pops up or once it's activated, it's probably a fairly dominant trait. So I would call really hard against that. That being said, I do know that people will often just pluck those feathers prior to showing, because they are disqualification in a lot of cases. So, just keep that in mind. Now your blue laced birds, I don't know if you're going for blue laced red or blue laced silver, or just a good blue with regular lacing. But you did say you want to know how to remove red. So, assuming that you're dealing with blue laced reds and you're trying to make silver, blue lace silvers, your best bet is going to take a silver laced male and breed it to a blue laced red female. Okay? So what's going to happen out of that is your pullets, half of your pullets are going to be silver laced and half will be blue laced silver. The cockerels will be split for gold and silver, and again half of them will be blue laced, half of them won't be. So what you'll want is those females there, and you'll breed them back to that silver male. Now I don't know how it is with Orpingtons, but I know with Wyandottes, typically your silvers are of a better show quality anyway. So a friend of mine, John Kessler, he was breeding this way to improve his blue laced red Wyandottes. Of course, where he was trying to get back to the red color, he was doing it blue laced red male over silver lace females, so that he would have blue laced red pullets to work with, and then he could breed them back that way. But that's the quickest way to get back to a blue lace silver. And again, if you want to make blue laced reds and just improve the type, blue laced red to a silver lace, you're going to get blue lace red pullets and black laced red. Now, there is a difference between black laced red and gold lace. And it's been a while since I've worked with Wyandottes, but if I recall, I want to say they have mahogany or some other red modifier to give them. What you're aiming for is more of a brick red as opposed to a golden bay. And that's where a lot of lines of blue lace threads have gotten screwed up over the years, is because people just breed gold lace into them thinking that's what it is when it isn't. So while they're increasing their numbers, they're diminishing the quality. So I hope that makes sense. So that should answer those questions. You have some pullets, you said, that had some mottled head down, so you're thinking that they may have mottled. Okay, if you got males and females that you think are carrying mottled, you can either breed them back to the parents that they came out of, or, just something I don't usually recommend is breeding full siblings together. But you can do it once in a blue moon, especially as a test mating. So if you've got males and females out of this that look like they're carrying the trait, you can breed them together and you'll see what comes out of them. And if they're spangled, then you've got something to work with, and you can start breeding the spangleds back to their split parents and establishing lines that way. It's better to use a little more distance between the birds you're breeding, parent down to offspring, or, brother of the father back to one of the daughters or something like that. One of the videos I did basically talks about how basically anything that's purebred is inbred. It's just that you have to do it in a controlled manner to cut down on the negative traits and select for the positive traits. But I hope this clarified that. Keep in mind that there are some dominant traits that can be hidden by recessive and other dominant traits. Basically, genes exist on alleles, and you can think of them as like layers of a sandwich in a way. So you've got like your toast, square toast, and you've got a slice of cheese, make it Swiss, and you've got a tomato, and then you've got your cheeseburger underneath of there. Okay, so when you compress that down, the first thing you're going to see is the bread. Well, case in point, this could be dominant white. Dominant white can hide things like barring or blue, and you won't know until you test mate and sort out what all's in there. A lot of times white birds, and this is why when people ask what happens if I cross this white bird to this black bird, what am I going to get? Well, the fact of the matter is most white birds and most black birds have a lot of different genes interacting with one another to produce that solid, simple color. It's not unusual for a white bird to maybe have dominant white and recessive white, possibly blue, maybe cuckoo. Basically you're aiming for a solid white bird, so you want as many genes that inhibit or dilute pigment as possible. So, anyhow, I hope that clarified more than confused, and thank you for the suggestion, and everybody have a good one.